What up and welcome to Something by Brian. I'm Brian, and last upload I asked if you'd rather see a draw view for Lightyear, Thor, Love and Thunder, or the latest season of Stranger Things. I put up a poll on my Instagram and Elle and the gang took it easily with 87% of the votes. So without much further ado, let's get to it. I haven't reviewed series before, so we're treading new ground here, and I've decided that it would be tedious for me and boring for you if I just go through it episode by episode, so what I'll do is discuss the various storylines individually and in order of how much I enjoyed them, from least to most. Overall though, I can start by proclaiming that I think this is the best the series has been since season 1. Oh, and full on spoilers for everything Stranger Things incoming. Can't say you haven't been warned now. So to quickly recap what I thought was the weakest storyline in the season. Mike goes to sunny California to spend spring break with his girlfriend and best friend, and I really like the beginning here. I enjoy how oblivious Mike is to Will's feelings and friendship. I enjoy Jonathan's descent into pothead with the new character Argyle, and I like that Elle is being bullied. I mean, I don't enjoy that Elle is being bullied, but it is always an interesting dynamic to see a switch in power. She's used to being able to do anything, essentially. And suddenly she's caught in this new foreign world of gossip and social hierarchy, totally defenseless. Very interesting. Also, I thoroughly enjoyed that before she devastated that poor but absolutely insufferable bully's face, she actually tried the right way of explaining how much she got hurt and demanding what could fix that and an apology. I thought that was very poignant, and the face mashing a bit excessive. However, when Joyce and Elle depart this storyline, it sorta gets a bit stale. The urgency of them getting to Elle isn't that exciting, and the weird side quest to Dustin's girlfriend Susie's house is a bit too silly for my taste and felt a bit filler. When they finally reunite with Elle, it gets a bit more interesting again, and I enjoyed, I'll come back to this fact throughout the entire video, but I enjoyed and was very enticed by the way all the stories merged and joined the fight against Vecna. Also, let me just nip this in the bud immediately, and this is Vecna, how he looks in the show. I hate it. We've had grey antagonistic versions of our protagonists for about 2 decades now. It's boring. Also, let me cement that I'm not shitting on the prosthetics, the CGI, nor the performance. That's all stellar. I'm just thoroughly unimpressed by the design. He's just a grey ghoul, with no nose. For no real apparent reason even. The Vecna from Dungeons & Dragons has his nose in most depictions. And also, I've always gotten the impression from the show that the many parallels and names from D&D is just the kids making some sort of sense of all the strangeness and not really an inspiration for designs. The show's Demogorgon and Mindflayer is a huge departure from normal depictions at least. Also, I do understand due to the twisty origin of him, he had to be unrecognizable, but still they could have done it more interestingly, I feel. The most visually compelling thing about this design is the asymmetry and his monster hand. They should have done more with that. Without that red tint and that grandfather clock clicking away, his scenes and presence would have been a lot more lackluster. Oh, and of course Jamie Campbell Bower's performance is incredible. Must be so tough to emote with all that on your face. But I'll argue till the day I die that it was a goddamn shame they disguised his features so heavily, since he already has the appearance of an apex predator. You know, but in like a good way. Anyways, back to the storylines. As mentioned before the tangent, the combination of the story when they assist Elle with the freezer and pep talk is pretty engaging, but still it stood out to me as the most filler plotline of the season. I like Noah Schnapp's portrayal of Will, and the heart-to-heart between the two brothers were amazing. I'm not sure why everybody is dunking on him and his acting. I thought he did great. Argyle really grew on me throughout the season too, and I liked how he ended up fitting into assisting with everything. But the show itself, I mean, was a bit aware of it being filler too, as this storyline wasn't featured in every episode. 11's storyline started out with the above one, and I love teenage coming-of-age stuff, where they have to learn to navigate that scary new world of adulting and such, so the issues between her and Mike I liked, even though it isn't exactly groundbreaking stuff that the guy is having trouble articulating his feelings, but I liked it. I like Finn Wolfhard as Mike, even though I must admit they aren't really doing anything particularly interesting with the character, and he's quickly becoming my least favorite of the original 4 boys on bikes. And when Paul Racer turns up and promises they'll get her powers back, and that Hawkins is in danger, I'm pretty enticed by all of it. And then we see Papa back, and while Papa and Elle's relationship is interesting and all, it has been pretty developed and examined in the previous seasons, and therefore this storyline loses some steam for me and starts dragging a bit. I enjoyed the flashback sequences a lot and thought it was cool to see some of the other numbers, even though it seemed they all just had 11-like powers now, So I guess number 8 was crazy special for developing that putting images in your head Professor X kind of power. Anyways, the climax at the facility was pretty cool, and I loved that Elle didn't give that scumbag Papa the satisfaction. And I also liked that it made the road trip plotline a bit more urgent, if super convenient though. But it was nice that it came together like that. I thought the entire, oh, the military is going to kill Elle was a bit exhausting, but nothing too bad. And yeah, when Elle rejoins the others and they fix up a freezer so she can assist the others in the fight is nice. It felt true to the lore established, and the back and forth between Elle and Vecna was compelling. She tried reasoning, empathy, and compassion, but was met with utter disdain and arrogance. I was captivated through that entire fight, and on the edge of my seat multiple times in that sequence, so great job there. Okay, but let's take it back to the start again and go to Callie once more. Joyce is a wonderful character. I love her, if you won't do anything, then I'm gonna attitude, and I've loved Winona Ryder forever, I think. And when she receives a mysterious package from Russia, I was immediately interested. Which is weird, because the Russian plotline in Season 3, Below the Mall, was a bit silly to me, and if it wasn't for Steve, Dustin and Robin, that storyline would have lost me completely. But I guess I was more invested in Hopper's survival than I thought I would be. Also, I adore Maury, so whenever he's heavily featured, I'm happy. I like the guard, Enzo, that ended up assisting Hopper, but to this storyline's demise, I was never in any sort of doubt that they wouldn't get to him and save him, even with all the double-crossing and such, because why would the Duffer brothers have kept him alive just to kill him in a weird prison break? So points deducted for that, since it sorta stole some of the suspense. But super suspenseful or not, when they had to break into the prison again, I was fully on board, because as stated earlier, I really liked how all the storylines assisted in the final fight, even though this one was a bit, let's be gentle and call it convenient. Not the hive mind thing, that has been established and made sense, but the call to Owen's confidant that made them aware the kids and Hawkins needed them, that was a bit contrived. But Murray impersonating that pilot was hilarious, and the fight with the Demodogs and Demogorgon was cool, even if the Knight of Hawkins swinging a sword is a bit on the nose. But come on, this series is borderline fantasy, and it looked and felt great. And also it was just lovely to see Hopper and Elle together again. David Harbour is a powerhouse and can really do a lot with very little. Their hug towards the ending of the season was so cathartic. And lastly, all those poor souls who stayed in Hawkins. I loved this plotline. And of course, it had to be the best and most developed. Strangerthings is Hawkins. And the characters they've gathered here were some familiar but also some really interesting couplings. But I'm already getting ahead of myself. The story here also doesn't wait a second. We're immediately introduced to the lurking evil of Vecna and his creepy body horror powers. And also to the new character of Eddie and the new dynamic in the group, since Lucas wants to be popular and Max is coping with the loss of her brother. The funniest and most interesting and engaging stuff in this plotline was definitely the search for Vecna and how to understand and get rid of him. His attacks on Chrissy and that reporter kid was horrific, and it didn't shy away from it. This season was the scariest it has been since season 1, and I don't mind a good scare now and again, so I hope they continue down this path. The jocks convincing the townsfolk that the D&D group is a satanic cult and that Eddie is responsible is very on brand for 80s jocks and the 80s in general, but it felt sort of forced still, and somewhat unbelievable. I get that a scenario had to be written that would keep Eddie hidden, and act as a foil to the gang and their efforts to stop Vecna without being metaphysical, but I feel it could have been done differently. This is not a slight on Mason Dye either. He was a very believable, most popular kid in town jerk. And I can also appreciate the insights Lucas had to learn about himself by observing these basketballers. But still, this time around the group was actually so much in over their heads that the added little obstacle of gun-toting jocks was a bit unnecessary. Also, and now I'm addressing you directly, Matt and Ross Duffer, if you hadn't written a murderous mob in that wanted Eddie dead, maybe, just maybe, you could have kept him alive and perhaps killed another, preferably not a lovable newcomer. That felt a bit too easy. Anyways, the coupling of Nancy and Robin was wonderful, and I loved how we learned more and more about Henry whilst simultaneously figuring out more and more about number 1. The romantic undertones between Nancy and Steve I could do without, but it's nothing that distracts from the experience. Dustin and Steve are always just perfection, but somehow with the added jealousy sparked by Eddie, their relationship was taken to new heights in this season as well. If Dustin or Steve dies, I don't know what I'll do. Probably nothing. Maybe a strongly worded tweet. Sadie elevated Max in this season. Max was already a favorite of mine, but holy moly, she's just entered a whole new league. The isolation and the anxiety she portrayed, the guilt and sorrow, and lastly, that badass defiance. I'm super intrigued to see what happens with her, as Dr. Brenner had that one line about when one attacks, he absorbs his victims. And according to Lucas, she was dead for multiple minutes, so I'm interested in seeing if she'll wake up before Vecna is truly defeated. I hope she does, and I hope that she, like Will, is now kissed by the Upside Down and therefore has some weirdness about her. The multidimensional pronged attack on Vecna, or what you want to call their plan, was super suspenseful and really cool. I loved how they managed to both beat his physical being and his spirit. That was very innovative and super cool to see them finally taking the fight to the Upside Down instead of just always getting invaded. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my likes and dislikes for the various plotlines, and an overarching issue was definitely the length. It was a long season and sometimes it felt a bit unnecessarily stretched. The road trip to Susie springs to mind. The aforementioned jogs likewise. But overall, I was thoroughly entertained by this season and binged it as much as humanly possible with a toddler running about. I liked how Netflix split the season when releasing. It gave me a chance to catch it all. But as mentioned in the very beginning of the video, I think this is the strongest Stranger Things have been since season 1. And I quite enjoy both season 2 and 3 as well. But I don't know, there was just something Stranger Thingy about this season that was missing in season 3 at least. Which is impressive since they kept the group divided throughout this season. I'm very psyched going forward, also a bit skeptical. With the entire city of Hawkins devastated, it feels a bit too massive for just our little gang of misfits to handle. But I'm very hopeful for the final season, even though there's probably gonna be a time jump due to the actors actually aging, so it'll be interesting to see how long Hawkins will stay contaminated. I've been left with about 100 questions about the Upside Down. Like, did Vecna build the mirrored version of his hometown when he arrived? Did 11 create the place, or just simply open the door? What was up with the time travel aspect of it all that Nancy discovered? That implied that it was Will's disappearance that somehow triggered the mirroring of our world, or am I reading that wrong? Do you disagree with my review? Do you think Stranger Things have now become bad and is heading the way of Game of Thrones with a horrible ending? I'm genuinely interested in hearing what you thought, so please consider dropping a comment below. And always, if you like the drawing, consider liking the video, and if you like the video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching this, and until next time, take care.